Yeah,
I
I know.
mean,
Well, that's
I
a good
could I
idea.
could be on Drive to Survive. I think if I did that, I wouldn't survive.
Well, I don't know.
I'm Dave Amps, Managing Director of Routeco Group, which consists of Routeco in the UK, in the Netherlands, Austria, Belgium and Switzerland. And we also have a small specialist software business doing digital twin technology. In terms of what the role entails, really it's setting the strategic direction. It's one of the only jobs in the business that looks at all of the parts of the business. As a kid, I mean, it goes all the way back to then, I was one of those kids that any broken electrical or electronic gadget, and there wasn't many gadgets back then, I would be taking that to pieces, not a clue what was in it, but it looked cool. I think having the surname Amps is, a bit of an obvious one. My oldest brother went into mechanical engineering job, and I thought what he was doing kind of sounded pretty cool. I didn't want to do the mechanical side of it. I was more interested in the electrical side of it. Didn't want to do A-levels and university. I wanted to do something more practical, more real, if you want to call it that. And there were some really good apprenticeship opportunities with 4 or 5 major kind of blue chip names back then, and was lucky enough to be selected as one of the apprentices for Perkins Engines, as it was back then before they're now owned by Caterpillar. So I'd only been doing the job for a couple of years. I had looked round the rest of the team. I was in my very early 20s. In fact, when I started doing that job, I was 20. And I'd kind of looked round, and the next youngest person to me was 40. So, did I want to be sitting there in that same office doing a similar thing for 20 years? Probably not, but it was a fantastic experience. And I do feel slightly guilty because they gave me an absolutely super start in life with the apprenticeship, and kind of leaving them after that investment was quite a big wrench. You do feel some level of responsibility for that. But yeah, what actually caused the route to Routeco was somebody put 600 amp fuses in a 400 amp breaker on the production line, which promptly melted and took the substation out. So when I came in at 7:15 in the morning, there was all panic trying to find a replacement breaker. The local Nuianaires didn't have one, rang Routeco, they were able to source one from Milton Keynes. And the rest is history, really. That was the contact. I walked into the branch there, a guy called Andy Lobb, who was Peterborough branch manager, said, hey, there's this technical role going, sounds like, you'd kind of fit. I had an interview with Tony Usher, who was the technical manager at the time, and the rest is literally history then. That's what kind of got me in. The original piece was, it was an opportunity in a completely different organisation, and as I said previously, this aged workforce or this aged team that I was working in, the company was a mechanical engineering company. They built and still build diesel engines. So whilst there was a massive team of mechanical engineers, there was a very small team of electrical engineers. So the opportunity within the business was always going to be limited, and probably sounded a bit precocious when I started, but in my first ever interview at Perkins to get the apprenticeship role at 16, they said, what do you want to do? Where do you see yourself? And I said, well, I want to be a director. And they laughed. And I said, no, I'm serious, that's what I want to do. And they laughed again because, it's a very large organisation. But that was always, even at 16, this was a route through. I didn't particularly want to get I knew that I wanted to be practical, but I didn't want to be in the factory, for the whole of my life. I saw that as a route, learning, understanding the business, which is critical in any organisation. And I think what I saw at Perkins was that was going to be limited with my specific skill set. So when I came to Routeco, I kind of looked around and thought, this is my fit. This fits me. It's cool company, pretty small at the time, relatively speaking. I think when I started, it was under 30 million. So I was going from a $1 billion engine company that was owned by Caterpillar, you know, these massive brand names, to Routeco, you know, who is that, 30 million, you know, I think it was 100 people or something like that. So it was then really seeing the opportunity to grow with the business and be part of something. But I think it was being able to have an impact within an organisation and not just be a cog in the wheel, you know, that doesn't really matter if it's there or not. So I think that was the draw to Routeco, was seeing the opportunity, and through the interview process, talking to Tony Usher, who interviewed me, but also David Wilson, who was one of the owners, Peter Wilson, the founder, his brother, and I just thought, yeah, I can see myself working here. Started all the way back in June 1998 as an external technical support engineer, what has now become what we call our specialist role, so what would be an automation specialist role. At the time I covered Peterborough, Ipswich and Derby. No sat-nav back then, mobile phones, obviously you had mobile phones, but yeah, a car full of maps and trying to find customers and meet sales engineers to those meetings, 3 or 4 meetings a day. It was an interesting period. The role of product engineer was created, which was based here in Milton Keynes. And that was really primary engagement with Rockwell Automation on the PLC automation range of products. So kind of aligned with the product range that I was familiar with, but more than looking at bringing that product to market, working with the supplier and working with the sales team on a wider basis on how that product kind of is presented and delivered to the customer, and kind of a bit of a, you know, supporting then the technical team in the introduction of those products as well. That then became product manager. I then managed the technical support desk here at Milton Keynes, and then managed the automation specialist team. As part of that, kind of the roles kind of evolved and changed. I was then national sales manager. That was kind of quite a large change because it went from being kind of ultra technical, which is what I was, through to then managing the sales team. But because the business is technical sales, it just kind of seemed to make sense, and the way that we sell through that technical nature, rather than just, you know, pure sales when you go to a garage and somebody's trying to sell you a car. It just infuriates me. It's like, you know, I do not want to be sold to like that. I want to, you know, be enabled to buy something, and I think that's how we sell. You know, it's enabling the customer to get the best solution, not there going, I'm going to sell you this whether you want it or not. It's about, what do you need? So national sales manager, then sales director, and then a brief stint as chief operating officer, which is really, that was the managing director's kind of put the role in to enable me to get experience, so that as he was retiring, that I had that experience in that kind of oversight role before becoming managing director, which was invaluable because he was there as a backstop. He was kind of ultimately responsible, but really on a day-to-day basis, I was doing that role. So that was a really smart way of, as we do in these senior positions, having a bumpless transfer of power, so that when Ian Stewart, the previous managing director, when he retired and I assumed the role, hopefully nobody noticed, you know, the business didn't kind of crash or do anything. It was just, well, it's the same as yesterday, you know, we move forward. So yeah, quite a few different roles over that 6 years of work. So. Yeah, it's it's difficult to say, but I think if I'm being absolutely honest, because there's lots of individual things that I look back and go, oh, that's pretty cool, and yeah, I really enjoyed that. And you know, some of the events that we do now, you know, I started when I was back as product manager, I started Routeco's delivery of those events, and to see the many different types of events now. But I think being absolutely honest, it's the people that I've either employed directly or put in position, or have been put in position by people that I've put in position. And seeing those individuals flourish, move on, come through the business, be in, you know, significant roles. And even for the ones that have left us because, you know, they found other opportunities, but seeing those people flourish and do well, you know, hopefully through some level of interaction and pick up from myself, that's probably the core thing, because that's all you really leave behind. I think that's the bit, it's the people. The Routeco is only as good as the people within it. We're not a manufacturer. Yeah, we have great processes and all this kind of stuff, but it's the people that enable and make that, you know, that's the gold dust. I mean, I think when you lose control, and obviously you don't have control of the external market factors, so you can have a plan, and I think, I'm sure everyone will say, you know, Mike Tyson's kind of, I'm not ripping him off too much by saying, you know, everyone can have a plan, but when you get punched in the face, you've got to have a different plan, and quickly. And I think when you have this kind of perfect plan of, well, this is what we're going to do, and then external forces change that, that can be really frustrating, because you know, with all you just want to do what you've done, and you have to then go off course to your original plan. COVID's a perfect example of that, you know, and I think weirdly that was the first year of me doing this managing director role, and everybody said, gosh, that must have been really challenging, you know, how on earth are you coming into that role? But strangely, it made it easier, because no one else had experienced this. So there was nothing to compare it to. We were kind of, I wouldn't say making it up as we went along, but we were we were having daily calls with the executive management team, weekly calls with the wider business, responding and reacting to external things coming through almost, you know, on a daily basis. Government's done this, what do we need to do? You know, we've all got to work from home. And we'd kind of foreseen that and had managed to source laptops to enable everybody to do that. So I think that transfer of ability for the business to continue during COVID, and everybody works safely at home and not get themselves at risk and all of those things, you know, that's one of those that, and that wasn't just me, you know, that's the executive management team, and that's all of the people in the business being adaptable. And that's, I think, again, one of the great strengths of Routeco, is that ability to adapt and spin on a dime when you absolutely need to. We're a fairly big ship now, but that ability to spin on a dime when your back's against the wall and everybody just goes, yeah, we're going to do this because it's the right thing to do, and it's the right thing to do for the business. And I think ultimately, a lot of the people in the organisation have a deep care for Routeco and the people in it, more so than it's just a business that you kind of go to and pick up your paycheck and, you know, get to go home at the end of the day, you know, or at least I hope they do. I can't remember the year, but we kind of had a pretty rough customer assessment, and the whole reason for doing those is you've got to listen to what the customers are saying, and I think we'd probably lost our way a little bit in our technical USP, and we were almost, you know, back to the sales point of just selling kind of KPI, this kind of thing. So we had a complete kind of overhaul of our kind of sales team. But what we got out of that, and it was a kind of tumultuous time, but what we got out of that was the foundations of the business that we have today. And I think we were at risk of, you know, going down the wrong avenue, because we've got to have a difference. Otherwise you're just like everybody else. So I think being able to Not about persuade, but to be part of that decision-making group to pivot the organisation, engage the sales team. We did an inordinate amount of training. Our main partner, Rockwell Automation, was incredibly helpful in enabling us to do that. Spent a lot of time, and not just them, but other technical partners as well. And that really sort of set the whole foundation. So, you know, that's one of those things that was a significant foundational block in the modern Routeco. So, you know. It's got bigger, it's geographically expanded. And I think, you know, this is one of the things that I say to, well, anyone that wants to listen, but certainly, you know, new starters and in any of the times when I'm addressing the wider group, is every single person in the organisation can make a difference within the business. You've just got to want to do it. And some people want to come in, do their job, pick up their pay packet and go home, and that's fine. You need people like that in an organisation. But I think if you want to make a difference, it's making that little bit of extra effort. And if you care for something, that isn't actually, it doesn't feel like effort. It feels like you're doing it for yourself, for the business, for your team, your friends within the business as well. But that willingness, and when you see people do it, the other evening, Friday night, 9:30, I got an email out of nowhere from somebody that was on site in trouble with something, and within 25 minutes, I'd gone through, you know, 2 or 3 people and got down to the right person that was able and willing at 9:30 at night on a Friday night to ring the customer, so that Saturday morning, the solution that they needed was there. And that's not expected, but it's really good when it happens, and it makes you feel good because it's like people care, because you don't have to do that stuff. You know, we're not paying people to do that. That's people going, I want to do that because it's the right thing to do for the customer, and that's brilliant. You know, that makes you feel good. It's not about a list of do these 10 things and you'll get recognised. You get recognised by making the extra effort, and that could be in any huge number of different things. And you know, when people do it, they feel it. You know, they feel it, and I think those are the people that are then recognised, identified. Names are talked about in the executive management team. Oh, that's a good person, good individual, they've done really well there. You know, that's someone for the future. And when opportunities for development or projects or teams or promotion arise, that has kudos, that has credit, it has value, and you know, it goes towards those people coming through the business. And Routeco, as you know, my career has shown, whilst getting external expertise into the business is really useful in some areas, having people that have come up from the coalface, from the bottom, you know what I mean? I've been there, so I can say that, I guess, that have come up through the business and have experienced the frustrations that they had in those roles, or the customers' frustrations, and they can come into a position where they can go, yeah, that wasn't so good. I'm going to change that now because I have real life experience of that. That's, again, that has massive value to the business because it's real. You know, it's not an external thought process or an external consultant telling us that we should do this because the customers like it. We know because we've been there, we've spoken to the customers, we've felt the frustrations. And that's really important, especially as me and the rest of the executive management team spend longer in these positions. It's even more important that the people at the coalface doing the real work are enabled to either identify or change, or at least highlight for us to be aware of, this is an issue, we should do something about it. And that's important. And you know, nobody should suffer in silence. It should be, you know, we could be better, let's be better. I met my wife Mel here in the early 2000. So that was obviously a life-changing moment. So not only has Routeco given me a career, ability to buy our own house and all of these things, it's also given me my wife and then obviously consequently my son. So I owe a huge debt of gratitude to the business and the people within it that have enabled that to happen. Travel, I mean, I've literally been all over the world with, so that is not as glamorous as it sounds, because a lot of that is, airport, factory, office, back again, but just to be able to have traveled extensively and done that kind of stuff is an experience that most people will never have, and it's a byproduct of the work that we do. But yeah, I'll be forever grateful for that. I think in terms of friendships, and lifelong friendships with people, not just within Routeco, but the suppliers as well. Yeah, and being able to have met and connected with literally thousands of people, like-minded people. And I've had some fascinating and interesting conversations, mostly with those people. It just adds another element to your life. And sometimes you speak to people and they have fairly closed quarter, live, work in an area. But to have had that experience has been pretty cool. As the product engineer and product manager, that was a lot of engagement with the suppliers, and not just Rockwell Automation, but the European based suppliers as well. So, I mean, there's not many countries in Europe that I haven't, at least been in the country for 24 hours, sometimes not much more than that. But yeah, and different cultures as well. It's amazing the different cultures that we deal with. Obviously, we've got operations in 4 countries outside of the UK, and each of those cultures are quite different, which can be fun at times and not so fun at other times. But yeah, it's life experience, and we're only a combination of the external experience and influences that we get. That's what makes us, that's what kind of builds us over the years. And it's all of that engagement, communication, figuring out, how am I going to work with this person, because they're, if I behave like this is not going to go well. So being able to be adaptable, and I think that has helped me in this role. You have to be not, and this, you can't think this sounds two-faced, but you have to be a different person for different people to get the most out of them, but also to make them comfortable and enable them to deliver what they're capable of. Some people need more of a push. Some people, need more encouragement. Some people, you just need to get out their way and let them do it and not stand in front of them. And that's life experience. You struggle. You can't read that. We can, but it's you can only really practice it through experience. I would hope engaging. I mean, generally I try and find better people than me, because that's the trick. Find really good people, put them in the roles, work with them to define the forward direction that we, the business, that area wants to go. And if you've got the right people, you can, to some degree, again, get out of their way. Make sure that they have your full support, and sometimes that support is outside of that area to enable them to do that. But work with people in a kind of collaborative way. I think if you're having to tell people every day what to do, that can be a manager's role at a level. Sometimes you need to do that, although ideally not. But at this kind of level, with working with the team around me, that's not how it should work. And I look at some of the larger organizations that we engage with, and I see really competent people who are way more capable than they are being allowed to be. And that must be very frustrating for them and kind of disappointing, because, for the business, because they're just not able to give what they could, and you look at them and go, you're better than this. I try and be real. fair, honest, engaging. I like telling stories. If you can tell a story about, where what people can achieve, where they can go, but being part of something, being part of Routeco. And some people get it and some people don't, and that's okay. And then, I think people either pick up and believe in that and they come with you, or they don't, and they go and do other things. And I think you can't force that, and I think any attempt to be insincere comes across. I would hope people, certainly I would hope people don't see me as being insincere. And having care for the organisation and the people within it, which make up the organisation, and hopefully people want to be part of that. In all decision making, or any decisions certainly about the direction of the business, you've got to have time. You've got to be really thinking about what you're doing, and you've got to frame the issue or frame what you're trying to fix. That's the most important thing, and that's where you need to spend the time. People can rush into, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this, but until you really understand what is the point and purpose of the decision that you're trying, or the result of what you're trying to do, you can then apply your expertise and everybody else's expertise, and always be asking yourself, does this fix the fundamental thing that you're trying to get at? Otherwise you can go off in tangents, but framing it is the most important thing. And then making sure that all of the appropriate people that are going to be involved, the stakeholders, are bought into what you're doing. It's very difficult to tell people what to do. It's much easier to get them in line with what you're doing and be part of the solution. If you're telling people what to do, there's all sorts of kind of things that go on behind the scenes where people will go, well, I don't want to do this, or I don't want to do that. So I think aligning people with the goal and getting them on the same page kind of just makes the implementation of it much easier. Change management becomes a huge part of that, and that's we've seen that with the CRM deployment, the CRM tool deployment that we did. And all of the stakeholders across all sides of the business were involved in that change, and it's been a really beneficial pickup. We went from sporadic use of the previous CRM tool to real engagement, because it's a tool that adds value, and it adds value because all of the stakeholders were involved in the design and build an end result. So it really gives us a benefit. Oh, that's a really difficult one. The risk with being a leader is that people look at you as the final decision maker, and consequently, if you're not careful, people can align with you and not challenge your decision. And that's not to say that every decision should be challenged. Sometimes we do things because we have to do things. But I think in all of the major and significant changes, and I think back to the branch or the service centre restructure that we had in 2020, the iterations that we went through with that process, and my original position to the position that we ended up in, is actually quite different, and that is for the benefit of the business, because you listen to input from all of the people that are involved in that process. So I think as a leader, it can be very tempting to go, we'll do this, and you just go off and do that. You've got to make sure that you listen to all of the people, and people that are different to you. And that's the strength of the Routeco executive management team. There are different voices within that team and different thought processes. And having those different thought processes gives you iterations and challenges the position that you think is the right one. Sometimes it is the right one, sometimes you can make edits to that. But if you're not careful, if you fill a room full of people that all look the same and think the same, you get groupthink. So having that diverse approach, which is important in all areas of the business, but having that level of diversity making some of those more significant decisions, very important. I think the pace of change is speeding up. I think previously, you go back into when I started in 1998, you saw 7, 8, 9 years before these kind of big technology changes. And I say big technology, some of the PLC ranges, but they're all iterations on the previous thing. They're recognizable. Somebody from the year 2000 would recognize what's going on today. I think software is accelerating that change beyond kind of almost recognition, and I think now we're seeing change happen every 2 or 3 years, and I think software capability, computer capability, AI, I'm sure will bring a huge kind of change. But also, if you look at a control architecture, a machine, a process, an OEM machine that our customers, panel builders, systems integrators and end users are doing, they're largely recognizable. So it's a real, but obviously the technology within it and the capability, and really it's the data that you can get out. Previously, these machines and processes did a thing. The trick now is it's the data that they create to be able to make decisions, and some of the software products that are coming out enable you to understand what's going on and make better decisions. And that, I think, is going to be the major change as we move forward, is what do we do with the data? How do we analyse it, and where does it steer us? The technical nature of the products, in some ways they're becoming easier to use, and I think a lot of these products that used to be hideously complicated to configure, because of the technology now, it's much more simple to do that. But in other ways, again, if we go back to the software, some of that is getting really complex. So being able to maintain our technical value add position, to be able to inform and steer our customers to make the right choices in terms of the solutions that they're after. They can present us with their requirement, their problem. It's for us then to pick our best solution to fix their problem. And I think that's where our value add will continue to be. And I think our specialists and our sales teams, our technical sales teams, we have to make sure that we maintain that competency and capability to be able to deliver that to customers. Because really the customer, it's about, they don't really care about the technology. The technology is kind of irrelevant. It's what they want to do with the technology. The technology is our job to deliver the best solution, and obviously for them to deploy it. But for the majority of people in our customers, it's the kind of end effect. It's the machine running faster or more efficient or more productively, or putting more widgets through, or giving data to make better decisions. The technology is almost kind of irrelevant, and that's what we need to remember as a seller of that technology. It's not the technology in and of itself, it's what it physically does to the customer. That's what's important. So I think you'll see AI take in the more mundane components of the technology. That might be technology selection, it might be technology deployment, but things that a controls engineer back in the 90s would have spent days or weeks just thumping away quite simplistic code because it had to be done. But the real value is in the more complex kind of real value add coding piece. And I think that's where we'll see AI certainly in the next few years start to come in, is that standardized code sets and for it to be able to go, okay, this is what's needed, and just build the 80% and then the 20% value piece. That's where I think the human being will come in and continue to add that value. So again, I think that's where we have to adapt as a business and organization. If previously when I started, if you had a data sheet and a selection guide, you were probably more informed than pretty much anybody else, because they didn't have access to those resources. That now is available immediately online through configurators, and I'm sure AI will make that even more. So that now is not a relevant part of the role. So you have to go up the value chain. You have to become more technical in that respect to be able to continue to add value that the customer needs, because they've got all that bit sorted already. I think keeping your eyes and ears open and making sure that we, as the leadership team, are listening to the folks that are there at the coalface, talking to the customers and talking to our customers directly, because they're the ones that are going to be innovating. There is innovation from the suppliers that come through, but there's innovation also from the customers that we have to adapt and demand to. I mean, you take the example of the iPhone. Nobody knew they wanted an iPhone until, Apple actually made one and put it in your hand. But nobody knew they wanted that. So there's innovation that comes through from suppliers, but then also customers demand that innovation themselves as well. And you look at our digital twin capability with our business AutoLogic that we acquired a few years back. The technology and the capability within that solution is really coming of age now. You can literally model and map an entire factory output for a day or a logistics centre for a day. And the thought of doing that even 5 or 10 years ago was almost beyond belief. And I think actually part of the issue is customers understanding and believing that you can do some of these things now. You can run a factory, complete digital twin, and run tomorrow's production in a digital format to see what happens. What happens if trucks don't turn up? What happens if people don't turn up? Where are your bottlenecks? What are you going to do about it? You can pre-plan for those things. That just wasn't possible. Computing power, it wasn't possible 10 years ago. And especially with a slightly aging workforce, is people for maybe the last 5 or 10 years of their working life don't want to see too much change. They just want to do what they did because they know it. So I think we're reliant on the younger generation coming through, being innovative and adopting these, competencies and capabilities. I mean, all the kids now using ChatGPT without a thought, and that will come through. And I think that will drive innovation in industry, which we will have to adapt to, or the, people that I leave behind will have to adapt to. But that's always been the case. You go back every 10 years, 1970s are unrecognisable to what we have today, but it's small iterative change. I think that's the point. But that will accelerate and become larger. Do you know, I'm glad I didn't know. Because I'd probably thought about doing something else. No. I mean, I certainly wouldn't. I don't regret a moment. I have loved my journey and progress, and actually, I've loved the learning that you take through each part of it. And I think you feel at the start you are this fully formed individual at 20 years old or 22 years old, and I think each year you can look back and go, gosh, that was an experience, and you take learning from that. But I think the learning is the experience, and I think it's difficult sometimes when, I see some of the really good, and I'm not old myself, but some of the really good younger people in the business that are hungry to get on and are asking, what do I need? What do I need to know? What do I need to know? And it's, through experience. And that can be frustrating for people because they think they know everything. And I think when people have had a few years and kind of look back and reflect, it's the years that you put in, the time that you put in, that gives you that experience. And there's no shortcut. You can go and get an MBA, or you can go on a leadership course, and it's all data and information. But until you've deployed and applied it in your own style with the people that are unique and individual around you, and then adapted it to suit because you have to, that's where you get the learning. So it literally, you can't buy experience, you have to earn experience. So yeah, there's nothing that I would look back and go, if only someone had told me that. Other than people can be the best and the worst bit of the job, obviously, but largely the best bit. And I think, when I look around Routeco at the people and individuals that we have, that's the bit that gives me the pride. Routeco is only as strong as the people that it has in it, and we've got some of the best people in the industry. So. I mean, there's been a few people over the years. I think in any role, or certainly as you come in through a business, if you can identify someone that has similar values and wants to have the time for you, which can be sometimes two different things. If you can align with them and create a relationship where You know, they don't mind you coming in and sitting down and stealing 5 or 10 minutes of their time. It has huge value. My original boss as a controls engineering manager at Perkins, you know, he formed my very early part of my career as I came into Routeco. Tony Usher, who was my boss at the time, and he was great. You know, Tony would just sit and listen to you and not give you the answers. It was always frustrating. You kind of went in there wanting an answer, but because he didn't do that, you found your own answers. And it took me some time to realize, you know, that was part of the value that he was bringing. He's not making it easy. He's making me dig deep and find the answers for those things. So Tony Usher, Paul Barsby, Ian Stewart, all in their own way, you know, added huge value in giving me that time, you know, to talk through things and not give me an immediate answer, but just be there. And I think largely, back to some of the decision making, having time to talk things out is actually that's what enables your brain to align with where it needs to be. So those have certainly been influential people. You don't really, which sounds a bit silly, but that isn't a bad thing, because, and I'm pretty sure all of the people on the executive management team of Routeco would say the same thing. These jobs become part of who you are. So you don't really switch off, because it's like having, whilst this isn't my business, you know, I don't own this, but I certainly feel like I do. And I think if you're in these positions, that's how you should feel, because then you care deeply about the people, the organisation, and where it's going, and you think about the kind of long term as well. But you can't do that on a 9 to 5. It becomes a pervasive component of your life that you're constantly, your brain, or you'll find yourself kind of gnawing at a thing or whatever it is on a Saturday or a Sunday. But that's okay. But what you do need is then a very supportive family around you to enable you to do that. You know, sometimes you need to take yourself off and do things or think, and it's just a lot of the time it is the time to think. And if you came into work to do that, you'd just be sitting there thinking all day, so you wouldn't be very productive or effective. You do need time to switch off, and the holidays and those kind of important moments with your family where you have full and 100% focus, you know, that's your switch off point. But I think in these roles, they do become part of who you are. And I think that's, we talked about the individuals that have kind of influenced me, and I was very interested, because those were owners of the business, that when they retired, how did they feel? Because that's the unknown journey, right? You know, when you have a career, which you do for 20, 30, 40 years, you know, hopefully in a business, and then you retire, and then what are you there for? You know, what's your meaning? What's your purpose? Going back to purpose we spoke about earlier. You know, what's the point of you? And I think, you know, that for me is a bit of the unknown, because if your identity is part of the fabric of the business, and then that goes away, because as soon as you walk out this door, you know, the next person steps up and the business carries on, you know, you become irrelevant pretty quickly. So I think, you know, that's part of my future development. And I say it's a while off, so I'm not going to worry about it yet. But that's part of my future development is what's your purpose afterwards. And I think certainly, you know, talking to Ian Stewart when he retired, how he is applying himself through charity work and working with, for him, the local athletics club, and giving back, but still being relevant, still being the point to you, rather than just going and sitting in an armchair reading a newspaper all day. So long-winded way of saying it's very difficult. Yeah, I mean, in terms of my vision for Routeco, it's pretty straightforward to see Routeco, and it's not all about turnover value, but it's pretty easy to see Routeco able to be a $500 million industrial automation distribution channel. Expansion into Europe with Rockwell, I think expansion on some of our complementary lines in the UK, utilising the facilities that we've got in digital marketing capabilities, Spark platform, the automated warehouse solution. And that's a pretty easy view. It's very easy to look at that as a strategy, much more difficult to deploy that because you need people to want to enable you to do those things through either acquisition or expansion. So yeah, I think, and that obviously means a much larger structure, a much larger organisation to be able to handle, manage and facilitate that. So I think, the opportunity for people coming into Routeco and that are already here, the growth is still, significant 2 or 3 times bigger than we could be now, which gives opportunity. And I think that's the key thing that people want. Not everybody, a lot of people want is, what's the opportunity? That's what I looked for when I came into Routeco. It was 30 million. Now it's, a couple of 100 million. So significant opportunity for personal growth along with the business. The other element of that is keeping at the forefront of being that technical value add channel. That's our USP in the marketplace. You look at our depth and range of product specialists, solution specialists on top of our sales team. And that's a unique position. Nobody else in the UK has that breadth of individuals or capability. And we need to make sure that we maintain that position and maintain the value. Back to the original point, AI automatic selection will take some of what was the part of those specialist roles, that will take that away. So we just need then to enable those individuals to kind of hop up and just become even more technically competent. Yeah, good choice, and go for it. Yeah, I think literally, and I say this not just to 18-year-old Dave, but or 16-year-old Dave as I was then as an apprentice, but to anybody that starts in Routeco is, if you care, if you make an effort, you'll get on. I've had people in the past ask me, what do I need to do? I think that's the wrong question. If you're asking that question, you're probably missing the point, because all you need to do is give a damn and make an effort. And it's surprising, and I say make an effort, it's make an effort above and beyond. And I think that's what I look back and think, how did I get here? And it's just doing something a little bit different to what everyone else was doing, looking for opportunities to be innovative or try something new or do something new. And of course, that's more difficult as time goes on. People have done a lot of those things, but you can still do them, change them, make them better. And I think that passion, drive, motivation to be part of something, when I say be part of something, I mean be part of something, not just in something that's moving in a direction, but have a desire to be part of it. And back to one of the original questions, what did I want to do? And my point of, I wanted to be a director of a business, or kind of, fantastic, whatever that means. But I think that's because I wanted to be part of something. And I think if you keep that in your mind, then you will naturally find yourself doing things that other people won't. And that's fine, because a lot of people want to come in, do the job, go home, and that is absolutely fine. You definitely need people like that. But for those individuals that want to make a difference, it's pretty straightforward to do that. You've just got to care. So that would be my advice to anybody, is go in any career, be it at Routeco or anywhere else, is just go into it. And if you really want to achieve something, just kind of look at it as yours and think, what would I do if I owned the place, or this little bit, what do I want to do? And then do it.